Good morning, class 12. I'm here again with your various decades of the Cold War. Okay, now this is 1950s escalation. So the decade that starts from 1950s. 1950s, okay, so you have the escalation, that is the Cold War increases, and you can see the death of Stalin 1953, okay, and you have Nikita Khrushchev now taking over USSR, okay, as the next prime minister of USSR, and Eisenhower, okay, who takes the place of Harry S. Truman of US. Okay, the president, next president. Then 1955, you said the Warsaw Pact signed. The Warsaw Pact, again, is a military alliance against NATO that was formed by US, and Warsaw is formed by your USSR. Okay, so it is also a kind of a defensive mechanism and military organization. Okay, so what was the reason of getting all these countries signed the Warsaw Pact? Okay, and the NATO was, if any of the countries who were the allies of USSR, okay, were attacked by any of the countries of your US, that is the NATO alliance, okay, then all the countries would come in the help of the country. Okay, so that is a military defensive organization. NATO and Warsaw, that is Warsaw is USSR and NATO is your US. Now space race begins here. Okay, the exploration of the space it begins. Because USSR was the first country to send the send the satellite to the space. Okay, and of course, although US was the first one to reach your moon exploration, so you have the space race. Okay, lots of money being spent by both the countries. Okay, as they were the superpowers. Okay, so the nuclear warfare, then the space race begins. So that is the events that happens during the Cold War. So that the various decades. Okay, within the span of 10 years, what happened, okay, in the 50s. Now you can see here, USSR backed groups now try to overthrow colonial governments in Asia, Latin America and Africa. So USSR got involved in all the guerrilla warfares and helped all those countries, okay, who were the victims of colonialism. Okay, so one good example of your colonialism was your if you can see, okay, and helped, and that's how they got involved in the proxy wars, both the countries. So that's the Vietnam War. Then as USSR backed the colonial governments, USA, which was the arsenal of democracy, now backs many undemocratic governments and dictators to stop. So that was of a faulty step, you can say, as USA was criticized for this steps by many of the countries, because it tried to prove that it was one of the democratic countries, okay, and always professed the ideologies of a democratic government, okay, but then itself backed many dictators, okay, and undemocratic governments. Now this of course happened in Iran, Guatemala, Dominica, Chile, Brazil, etc. Okay, the 1956 Hungarian Revolution that was crushed by the Soviets. Okay, here again USSR sends the help, okay, to stop because Hungary now did not want to remain, this Central Asian country did not Central European country did not want to remain as your communist country. Okay, so Hungarian Revolution was basically a students' revolution where they wanted to overthrow the communist government. Okay, but USSR was able to crush the revolt. Okay, and sent many tanks. Okay, and troops to stop this revolution in Hungary. Okay, and of course USSR also was criticized for this step. Then 1956 you have the Suez War. Okay, that is in Egypt. Okay, so you can see both USA being involved here. Okay, because Suez in Egypt, okay, it was owned by the Suez Canal. Okay, it was looked after by British. Okay, and here again you have the US involvement because because Britain wanted, okay, the Suez Canal to be used for its own purpose and wanted to sign the treaty with Colonel Nasser, okay, and who was the president of Egypt. Okay, so when he refused, then you have the Suez War because it is backed by US. Okay, the 1950s war in Indochina, again Indochina, meaning here the three countries, okay, that later on after the Vietnam War, of course, okay, it was these countries remained independent. Otherwise it was called Indochina. There's Laos, Vietnam and Cambodia. Okay, so you have the wars in the Vietnam 1950s, and where you see both the countries US and USA backed North Vietnam and South Vietnam, okay, to spread their ideologies. So that was in 1950s, where both the countries got involved in the proxy war, the decades of 1950s. Now in the 1960s, you go to the next decade, in the next 10 years. 1960 U-2 plane incident. Okay, now U-2 was a spying plane. Okay, it was a spy plane, okay, of US. Okay, and it was found that it was spying over USSR. So, and that happened just before the Paris summit, where they wanted to meet, where of course both the and the government of the countries. Okay, you have SNR USA. 1960s, again there's a change of government. Okay, so the next president, okay, of US was your SNR. Okay, and you have Nikita Khrushchev. So they were to meet in Paris summit, okay, to declare peace, okay, for the Cold War. But just before that, you have the U-2 plane incident, and then both countries, okay, could not make peace with it, because U-2 plane, that is your a plane that was a spying plane that was found, okay, in hovering, okay, around your USSR. Okay, then 1961, you have the Berlin Wall construction begins. Okay, now where you have the Berlin blockade that was done, okay, 1961, okay, the Berlin Wall. Now this wall was basically constructed, okay, by USSR to stop the people, and that wall was constructed against West Berlin. Okay, that was not under the control of your USSR. And why did it happen? Because people from East Germany were flying, of course, were migrating. Okay, a lot of migration was happening from people from East Germany to West Germany, because they did not want to be part of the communist government. Okay, that is why the Berlin Wall construction begins, okay, by USSR, so that you do not have people migrating from the East Germany to West Germany. Okay. Then 1962, you have the Cuban Missile Crisis, and this is one of the most important event of the Cold War, where the world was closest to the nuclear war that we have seen. Now, Cuba, that was next to, and I talked about the ballistic missile crisis yesterday. Yes, children, ballistic missile, okay, where your nuclear weapons could travel for 1,000 kilometers. So where Cuba, that was, as I said, that was the backyard of America. Okay, so when missile was placed in Cuba, then it could have destroyed the major cities, okay, of your America, okay, all your major Michigan, okay, Chicago, all those important cities, okay, of your America could have been easily destroyed by USSR USSR missiles. Okay, so that was one of the most important, and both the countries, okay, in the brink of the war, that was a brinkmanship. So that's the most important event. Please remember that Cuban Missile Crisis. We have to do that again in detail, how it led to the was also responsible for the Cold War. Now, Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. Cuba, of course, underwent a revolution in 1959, bringing communist Fidel Castro to power. Okay, Cuban, okay, government was supported by your USSR, okay, because it had a communist government, and Fidel Castro was one president, okay, who ruled over Cuba, a prime minister who ruled over Cuba for almost 50 years. Okay, and whereas USA now had backed another person, okay, in place of Fidel Castro, and that's how both the countries again get involved here as well, US and USSR. Now, USSR had positioned ballistic nuclear missiles, as I already said, okay, where they could travel there in 1962, threatening the entire continental US. So you can see where the backyard of Cuba, okay, you have the placement of all the missiles here by USSR, and from there, if the missiles were left, okay, then you could see the major cities of US like New York, Washington, Chicago, okay, all these important major cities, okay, of New York would have been of America would have been easily destroyed by the missile. Okay, and of course they did come to this is what it's called, okay, the brinkmanship. They came till here, okay, where one country, if it had fired, okay, the entire US could have been destroyed, and same way vice versa. Okay, so this is the brinkmanship of the Cuba Missile Crisis in 1962. Okay, but then this was again averted in the nick of time. Okay, at the very time, okay, you can see, of course, this nuclear war was stopped. Okay, then so you have your 2 year left. You have John F. Kennedy, because there's a change of government again. John F. Kennedy to your left, okay, US president, and you have Nikita Khrushchev, okay, the prime minister of USSR to your right. Okay, so now 1962. Again, the next event which you see, okay, in the 60s here, Sino-Soviet split due to ideological difference. Sino, that is China, and USSR, which are both communist countries. Now the split, okay, although they're both communist countries, now China blames USSR that they are not following the Marxist philosophy in the right way. Okay, so therefore China stops supporting USSR, okay, in a coordinated way. Okay, then 1968 you have the Prague Spring. Prague, that was your the capital of Czechoslovakia, okay, crushed by USSR, because that was also taken over by your USSR, okay. So that is uprising, the Prague uprising, that is known as, okay, that was crushed by USSR. Then the Vietnam War, that's the most important war again that was fought in human history, okay, of the Cold War, and that is your Vietnam War, okay. So that was between a civil war between North Vietnam and South Vietnam, and it is just basically because Vietnam was occupied by your France, okay, and where the people, okay, of Vietnam did not want any foreign intervention now, okay. They wanted the local government to rule, okay, and that's how there's a civil war between North Vietnam and South Vietnam. South Vietnam, as you see, was backed by USA, okay, the democratic form of government, and USSR backed your North Vietnam, that was your communist form of government. But finally you see USA backed North Vietnam and won in 1975. So finally, yeah, you can see that USA was defeated for the first time, although it was not directly involved in the war, but for the first time we can see the the failure of USA. Okay, children, thank you. So please go through it, and then please copy this again in your note copy, and you can send me this as an assignment, okay. And tomorrow we shall again start with your 1970s decade, okay, 1970, and the de-escalation, okay, in the war. Okay, children, thank you so much.